Great morning, world. This is your boy Dragon, and welcome to another Rise Up with Dragon. As a reminder, it is the goal of this podcast to remove the blindfolds of your mind so that you can gain access to higher levels of consciousness and tap into your true great potential. We do this with our podcast, weekly blog, and called The Dragon Slayer, one from the vault, and our upcoming online courses and books. So welcome to another Rise Up with Dragon.
Great morning, world! Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon!
Great morning, world. Very excited about this day. Got a new system here of my notes and some distinctions that I want to make. But as a quick reminder, I want to do a little bit of a promo here. This episode of the Rise Up with Dragon podcast is sponsored by Karma Mind.
Get into the float state with Karma Mind meditations and gear.
And as a quick reminder, where do meditations and this concept of working on getting in the float state, which I love, where does that fit into this whole concept of the interface response system and this idea of winning the day? It's just about bypassing your analytical mind. You know, meditations is another way of distancing yourself from that automatic knee-jerk system one response. So great morning, everybody. A couple of quick little distinctions. One thing, I have my first draft of all, and I'm excited because the second draft is actually, I think, just popped up on my phone of my NFTs. So we're getting very, very much into the world of NFTs, getting ready to drop a brand new podcast with a co-host that's going to be just epic. And, you know, the only thing I'll say on NFTs, obviously I'm creating my own, but I'm also very fascinated with it on a cultural, evolutionary level, with the whole advent of the metaverse and Web3 and all of this blockchain and decentralization and crypto. What I can see right now, and I've been watching it very carefully, is that NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are going to be a massive, massive part of our lives. And right now, as you listen to my podcast or you start listening to our others, because we're going to take people through it and really teach them how to play with it and be smart about it. You're at the tip of the spear of, something that is probably going to be bigger than the internet itself. So it's important, whether people are interested in it or not, to recognize these trends. There's a lot of fear associated with things like blockchain and cryptocurrency and all that stuff, because there's risk associated with it, but it's happening, and it's happening on a big level. And what I want to do for people is help remove the blindfolds that they're putting on themselves. So we're going to launch that podcast soon, probably about 2 weeks. So just quickly, some of my morning readings today is going to be all about the fierce urgency of now, in honor of one of my board of directors, Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King. And when I say board of directors, in my studio here, I have pictures of all the people that I go to. I think everybody should have a board of directors that I go to when I am contemplating something, the next move in my life, or when I'm working through some challenging times. I like to ask my board of directors, people like Nelson Mandela, Dr. Martin Luther King, Gandhi. I like to ask them questions, and just basically see what they would do. And yes, they do talk to me. So as I do this episode on the fierce urgency of now on Martin Luther King Day, I'm looking at this big, big picture of Dr. King doing his I Have a Dream speech. And it's very, very inspiring. So prior to that, though, I was just thinking, right now, Chicken and I are sick, meaning we're not feeling well. And it's just one distinction, because I know a lot of people are sick and not feeling well. I mean, all I see on social media, and when I check in with people, how you doing? What a dangerous question is to ask somebody how they're doing. A lot of people are womp, 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 they're below the line and they're sick. I haven't been feeling well. So that's us right now. We haven't been feeling well, and I'm starting to turn the corner. So I'm not that bad today. But what's interesting about being sick is how it messes with your interface response system. It messes with your ability to manage the happenings in life. There's voices in my head right now, and I know you'll resonate with this, that I deserve something that's not good for me, like junk food or whatever. And whether you agree with it or not, a lot of people come from the position of saying, "Oh, just have fun and relax." You know what I mean? And you look at that at first and you go, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? I'm supposed to give myself time and comfort and things like that. That's where comfort foods come from. But at the same time, if I look and I say, how does that support my dreams? I could say that taking downtime is good to rejuvenate, to go back full force. But at the same, in that moment, I'm losing track of the fact that I don't know how much time I have. So it's just an interesting thing because I believe that when you get sick, it grants you this hall pass to get away with things. I know I can't do that right now. I'm not feeling well. So in the scope of where success lives, I just find that when I get in these moments of being sick or whatever it is, I like to take advantage of challenging that programming that we have and saying, I'm going to do it anyway. Now, some people would perceive that being obsessive behavior, but then again, I would challenge anybody to recognize that nobody's ever got to the top of the mountain without obsessive behavior. And then the other thing that I came up with this morning, and these are going to be future rise ups, is I've just been really, really focusing a lot on learning to manage what I see as my kryptonite, and that is stupid people. So, give a shout out or a comment or give me some feedback. If you struggle with that as well, stupid people, they just baffle me. So rather than just being that way, because it's ineffective for me to move forward. If a stupid person has the ability to throw me off track, then I need to deal with that. So I've been studying a lot about stupid people. And today, there was a question posed, is interesting. And I'm going to give it to you today. It says, when somebody does something stupid, what is their motivation? What is the motivating factor behind doing something stupid? Like, do stupid people know that they're doing stupid things, or do they find out afterwards? Right? Just fascinating stuff, just to think about. So the interface response system would say when somebody does something stupid, first of all, you're the one that designates it as stupid. They don't know it's stupid, perhaps, right? Unless they, I asked my daughter that question, what motivates stupidity? And she says, getting attention. But I said, you're right. I can see that. But do they know that it's stupid, or are they just doing it to get attention? And that's where we got into this conversation. So anyway, just wanted to hand that to you. So let's talk about the fun, FUN, which really stands for the fierce urgency of now. So phase placing myself where I am today, rising up as the dragon, it really, really, truly, I mean, I could say it began when I was born, and I've had a lot of interesting things happen, but there was one very, very, in my timeline of life, I can depict, and in my book, there's one chapter called Life is a Line. And you'll see that I go through the timelines of our lives, and we look at events that happen, and we look at what they did, to, the next phase of our life. And we also look at where were we? Were we above or below the line at the time? So it's just a way of looking at things. But one pivotal moment happened as I remember it. It was at a time, you could probably resonate with this. It was at a time where I was going through a passage of pain in my life. You might be going through a passage of pain in your life right now. Life's been a pain lately. But basically I was working way too much, never saw my kids, as I remember it. Marriage was falling apart, and, health was deteriorating. Weight gain, too much drinking, getting high, I think I may even smoke cigarettes every now and then. So, I was basically in a place in my life where, I was doing those things that I was doing unhealthy things on all levels, physically, mentally, financially. I was doing all those things that we have a tendency of using to pretend that everything is fine and not feel and confront the pain. There's an insight right there. We have a tendency of, if we're practicing unhealthy habits, which are things that we're doing unconsciously, but then we come to the conclusion that they're not good for us. I just like to look at those things and say, what am I avoiding? Like, what am I trying to escape from? And that was just looking at my confronting my true pain, that I was depressed and that I was a workaholic and I wasn't a good dad, and I wasn't a good husband and all those things. So it makes sense why I was doing those things. But during this course because there's a little bit of a blessing in suffering and pain, especially if you study Buddhism. So, I felt lost in my career at that time. I wasn't going anywhere in my life, and I was taking and this is the worst part about those phases of our lives. And maybe this will be your catch today. I was spending way too much time of my life in dealing with that phase of my life rather than going after my dreams and making something of myself. I was trying to justify the importance of money. Like, I was justifying why I was spending so much time on money and things like that. So that's another example of like a cigarette. It just got me away from something else. So an interesting side thought, I like to think about this all the time. I love to speak to, deep thinkers about like success and financial freedom, defining financial freedom. It's more correlated to, is financial freedom for you? Is it more correlated to how much financial security you have, how much money and like abundance that you have, or is it more correlated to you at this phase in your life, how you obtain it? Are you financially free as a millionaire when spending 85% of your life working and missing out on relationships and family stuff? I believe this pressure, I believe all of this pressure adds tension in your life, and it's just such a fascinating thing to look at those phases of your life where you're kind of like unconsciously lost and things like that. So anyway, I was at that phase of my life. But what happened is it drove me to what I call a lightning bolt moment. So if you're at that phase in your life right now, and you're like, yeah, that sounds like me, I'm kind of lost right now. I kind of know that I'm sucking a bit, and I'm like just keeping up with the Joneses and stuff like that. But it's a good thing in a sense, because you're only going to be able to handle it for so long. Human beings cannot suck forever. It'll drive you to what I call a lightning bolt moment, where for me, I rose up out of my bed, and this is quite some time ago. This is before the word dragon was even a thing. I rose up out of my bed at 3 a.m. in the morning. This is when I was in my previous marriage. And I was in a cold, frantic sweat with a feeling of certainty that I'd never had before. It was a feeling of certainty and urgency. I just rose up out of my bed, and it's like all of a sudden, like everything came into my brain at once with this urgency to do something that most people would consider crazy. And for me, at 3 a.m. in the morning, during this just lull in my life, I had this idea to start a worldwide humanitarian effort, like Doctors Without Borders or something like that. So from the outside in, why would I was working like 90 hours a week and struggling, and my marriage is falling apart, and I never saw my kids. And now I have this idea to go and start a worldwide humanitarian effort. No idea what that even means, So I won't go over the whole story. That'll be in my book. But what was interesting about it is that what happened to me, what was interesting about the urgency behind it, it didn't matter how crazy the idea was. It was the difference between something that I wanted that evolves into something that I need. But then when you have the fierce urgency behind something, it's something that you must have, and that's what I want to talk about today. This is one of the things that I really pull from, that board of director, Martin Luther King. So this rise up is about what transpired next. It's about that feeling, that feeling of urgency, and it's kind of like why I had it. That's what I want to share with you today. Is not like get rid of the what, because I think we all kind of want the same things, but I think we're all going after things that are really, really not of high value. Because when they're of high value, and I'll give you some examples, the urgency goes way up to the point where there's no option but to go. So imagine if you learned how to hack this. Fierce urgency of now is also, you could also call it the fun. Imagine if you learned how to hack the fun and learn how to put yourself in a position where that version of you that goes no matter what shows up. So this happened to me innately, like a lightning bolt happened, and I think that I probably had enough of feeling that way, and everything changed. That one little moment, if you look at that timeline of life, we spend so many years working towards things. This happened in like 5 minutes. It's not even measurable on my timeline. So in this, in this rise up, I want to do two things. I want to honor, because it is Martin Luther King Day, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and also, address what I call one of the, world thought contributions that he made of this descriptive idea that he called the fierce urgency of now. It falls under one of those things where there's things that we know, but then when you hear somebody explain it, you all of a sudden own it. So when I heard him talk about the fierce urgency of now, I said, that's what it was. And that was important for me because that helped me get away from this idea that I just had a good day or I got lucky or something, or I was having a midlife crisis or something. A tendency of labeling moments in our life until we find out what really happened. So I thank you, Dr. King, for that. So it's that moment where we go because we must. It's that difference between want, need, and must have. That's the best way that I've found to describe, several moments like that I've had in my life. Whereas humans, we're drawn to our next step regardless of what is associated with the task. Now, most people, when they set goals, timestamp January 2022, when people set goals, one of the reasons why they don't go after them, if you go into my, if you're subscribed to my newsletter, and if you're not, you can get it for free going up to riseupwithdragon.com, and it's under blog. That's the one from the vault. And today it's called Ready, Set, Quit. That's my blog entry, and there's some other things in there as well. I put a lot of effort into that. You'll like it, especially for like a morning structure, kind of a rise up of your own. But it's called Ready, Set, Quit. So it's just talking about the idea of how people will go think that they have the fierce urgency of now. They'll set a goal. They'll say, I'm all in and I'm going to do whatever it takes. And then like soon after they stop. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not a lightning bolt moment. That's like static. When you touch a sweater and you get a little static charge. I'm talking about a lightning bolt moment. So I don't want you to learn how to hack static. I want you to learn how to hack lightning bolts, because that's when you go, and that different version. So whereas humans, we're drawn to our next step regardless of the tasks associated with it. We don't even care, when the what and the why is strong enough, the how doesn't matter. It just happens along the way, because it's imperative. So you've heard me describe this urgency in an example, and I think it's the best example, and it's a little bit creepy, but it's the example of how you would feel if I put your head underwater. And you probably wouldn't take it serious until you recognize that my strength had the ability to keep it there. And then all of a sudden something would click in your head, and your desired state, what you would want is air, and you would want it more than anything in the world right there. That's fierce urgency of now. It's like where you pull a version of yourself to go get something because it's that important. So when I woke up at 3 a.m. and I had this vision of doing this daunting task that was going to take a lot of time and money, and failure, in fact, in humanitarian work, I don't know if you ever really succeed unless you define what success is. It's because I had to. I was sick and tired of where I was at in my life, and I woke up that morning and the lightning bolt was showing me what I had to do next. And it's interesting because I don't do that anymore now. I gave that company after 15 years away to somebody else. I co-founded it with someone, and then we gave it away to somebody else. But it definitely played a role in bringing me to where I was at. So that's why I had to do it, because it was imperative. So, that's that fierce urgency of air. So I invite you to access your life, look into your life, and determine the realms if of significance, or I'm sorry, the realms in your life of where your air is. What in your life can you say is air? Some people say faith, some people say kids, family, health, or whatever. You know what it is. And then I would ask you to go back and say, really? Is it really? Is it really that important to you? So you may, think it's status or money, right? When you think that the fierce urgency is behind making money, is when you don't have it, when you're not paying your bills, right? That is a tough one because that comes from a place of fear and lack. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. Although there is urgency, urgency definitely comes when there is lack. What I find in my coaching of people that are looking to lose weight and get their nutrition right, it's very rare that people come to me like proactively and say, "Hey, I just want to optimize their health." They do, but those are kind of unicorns. What I typically see is that people find out that they're afraid of something that they're because their parents had a heart attack or something, or a doctor said, "I'm going to put you on meds," or you just found out something, or there's a wedding coming and you can't fit into your dress. So that kind of urgency is not as powerful because there's a lot of shame and blame associated with it, that you've gotten yourself into that situation. But then again, I had some of that. I'm talking about this moment where you actually feel compelled to do something because it's what you're meant to do. That's what I want to help you hack. Let's see where we're at. So status and money, but what I want you to go deeper into the realms of your significance and curiosity in your calling in life. That's the area I want to go to. Is that we don't go there enough. A lot of us talk about like, what's the meaning of life? Why am I here? But we avoid that. We avoid that with the hamster wheel. So let's go there today and just say, like, what is my calling in life? It's a very interesting topic. My destiny, what am I here to accomplish? Your destiny associated with why you're here, and the legacy. Here's another one, legacy that you're to leave behind. So my fierce urgency of now that I've hacked it and I think about it and I bring it to the table every day, my fun resolves in my radical acceptance. Dig on this. It resides, not resolves. It resides in my radical acceptance of my unpredictable time until I die. My mortality mentality, right? The mystery of how long I have. That's the birthplace of my urgency. And then from there, I start looking at the things that matter most. So that's why I can't just work a job. You know what I mean? Like I started my own home-based business, and I've taught thousands of people how to earn fantastic income from home. And I find that those people share the same thing. It's one thing to say I can't work for somebody. It's not about that. What I'm talking about is I don't want to waste my time working on somebody else's dream because I might not step into my calling and achieve my purpose and my identity. That's what it's like for me. That's why I wanted to come home. And also I want to be with my kids. So I can't stay in one place without exploring what's on the other side of where planes take you. That's another thing. I have a big urgency and fear, a fear of this urgency to explore. It's like, I don't want I don't want to find out down the road that there's like some sick place that my friend went and saw that I didn't take the time to see because I was working on something that didn't matter. So that's where the urgency, what is it? I'm worried that I won't see it all in time. One of my greatest goals in the world in my life is to see everything, right? So there's urgency behind that. Then there's my role as a father. There's urgency behind that too. So I'm giving you opportunities to identify your urgency. My role as a father, or my role as a father, the urgency to earn that moment. It took me a long time to write this. The urgency to earn that moment where my kids, my two sons and now my daughter, where my kids point at me and say, "That's my dad. That's part of my calling and my job." That's what that's when I see that happen, and I've seen it happen. But those are the moments where I feel complete in that sector of what's urgent to me. It's these things that I bring to the table every morning, and that's part of hacking the fun. It's those things that you have to bring to the table every morning to prevent my natural programming. You see, if you don't bring these concepts in this conversation, which is what I hope my podcast does for you, if you don't bring these concepts and these conversations to the table and think about them, what you're doing is risking your natural programming that thinks that resting and getting comfortable and taking days off and being okay with mediocrity, that will settle in. And that's when you accept mediocrity. And you remember my favorite quote is, if you continue to lick the lollipop of mediocrity, you'll suck forever. So if you're accepting mediocrity, I'm going to challenge that you're not challenging these things. You're not challenging what really matters most and what's urgent. So I put them on the table every single day so that I can evaluate how they suck up my unknown, undetermined, unpredictable time. So Dr. King was always very clear. So I want to bring this in. One of the things this is probably the number one thing that I got from Dr. King. So I've read all about him and I've listened to all of his speeches. And that's why he's on my wall. He's part of my board of directors. He was always very clear in the words that he said, in his speeches that, especially like the I Have a Dream. He was very, very clear when he painted a picture of where he felt that he was taking people, what his purpose was. When he talked about this concept of this dream that he had, of this destination and this accomplishment, he very, very often talked about the fact that he would probably not be there to see it. You want to talk about urgency. Imagine if you were going after something that was so important to you that you'd be okay with just participating in its creation. This is scary to me as a father. It's scary to me, to think, it's like I ask these questions. Will I see my children live a better life than me, which is part of my goal, and their kids live a better life than them? Because that's part of my legacy, right? I have a big urgency, but I'll never know. I'll never know. So imagine having something so important like that you're okay with just playing a role in moving it along, but you'll never see it. So that's what I love about Martin Luther King, is if you listen to his words, he would talk about just playing a role in something that he may not ever get credit for, And when I started doing humanitarian work, it felt good, and everybody said, "Oh, that's so great, you're doing it." But I very, very quickly saw that it was an uphill battle, one step forward, two steps back, when you're dealing with third world countries. But I did it anyway. So that really defined something that I felt was really, really important. So I think you get the idea. And then also step back from what you're doing, what you're spending your time with right now, and does it have this kind of power? And you'll probably most likely say no, whether you're successful or not. But you can see it. You can see it. And then, as I say, the biggest mistake is that we think that we have time. So, where is this? Yeah. Would you care to work for something towards something that you know, because it matters that most, to live a life contending for the things that matter most and are associated with your highest purpose and values to live your best life. So in closing, this is why Chicken and I made a decision. It's interesting to look at the concept. One of my favorite podcasts is The Minimalists. So shout out to them. Chicken and I became minimalists. And it didn't have anything to do with being cool. It had to do with living a life based on urgencies and things that really, really matter. You know, what we decided to do when we started thinking like this, and this is something you can start doing on whatever level, is we started to make sure that we were surrounding ourselves, our environment, with only the things, activities, and people that really, really mattered most, and more importantly, aligned with our dreams, our highest values. You know, so what do you say? That's my ending. You know, right now is where do we go from here? What do you say? I say let's start having some more fun in our lives. FUN, some more fierce urgencies of now. So hopefully, I did Martin Luther King Jr. And he can't see this, but he did this too before he died, created this conversation. But I hope that you, by listening to this podcast, and I really encourage you to share it with somebody else, because that's the best part about it. You know, I always say, if you learn something today, give it away. That's how it's going to stay. But bring these things to the table, and it's not easy. It's scary. It's scary to identify that you're time. But you will be very, very happy that you identify you waste your time, especially if it shifts you back into controlling your time, and you control your time by doing things that support, you know, what it is that you dream of and the things that matter most. So love and appreciate you. This has been another Rise Up with Dragon. I can't believe how many episodes and how long I've done this. A lot of fun stuff coming in 2022. Be on the lookout for the new podcast that's based on NFTs. Can't say the name yet. But I love and appreciate you. Have an amazing day.